Well, I was getting ready to bail out, and so I unhooked, and just as I unhooked, I looked over at the 3 o'clock position, and the FW-190 was coming after me. So I was able to turn into him. My aircraft was burning on the right side. I was able to turn into him as he fired, and he missed. And by that time, I couldn't go out to the right side because it's burning, and that's the side just go because the torque will throw you away from the aircraft. So I go out the left side, and I hit the tail with my knee, and I was about 350 feet when I bailed out. Pulled the ripcord, the chute opened, I swung once and hit the ground hard.
You are about to embark upon the great crusade
to meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it, good will prevail.
I was born in the St. Paul, Minnesota on the 25th of November, 1924. And when I was about 5 years old, we moved from Minnesota to Wisconsin. When I graduated from the 8th grade, I entered the Salvatorian Seminary in St. Nazian, Wisconsin, to become a Catholic priest. And I was there for a couple of years before World War II started. Waited until I turned 18, which was only about 4 months later. And I took the competitive exam for aviation cadet program in the Army Air Corps, and I was accepted. And on the 30th of November, 1942, I was sworn in as an aviation cadet. And then in October of 1944, I received orders to go to England, and I went to King's Cliff near Peterburs, which is about 90 miles north of London, to the 20th Fighter Group, 55th Fighter Squadron, flying P-51s. I'd never seen a P-51 before. It flew C model and D model, got about a little over 15 hours of flying time, and then started flying combat. Flew my first combat mission on the 12th of December of 1944. We were escorting several hundred bombers to targets, and I think it was in the Cologne area. And we had some heavy flak, but no enemy action or nothing, significant. The flak was lethal to the bombers, but we were maneuvering around, and we knew where the batteries were. We could see where the batteries were fired. The hardest part was seeing the bombers. They had to be straight and level and no maneuvering. They had to stay in their formations, and flak buddies being blown up, and you see aircraft going down, and parachutes in the air, and that sort of stuff. And I got to give tribute to the bomber crews. They were the bravest of the brave in the air. I never saw them deter from a target. They'd be always on. Even when we were hit by fighters, they'd keep their formations and onto the target. And I remember that I was seeing them. I just was hoping I could sustain that sort of bravery in my flying.
Tell me about the first time you had a real encounter with enemy aircraft.
Well, it was a large mission. I think it was something like 1,500 bombers and about 900 fighters, and we were going to targets in the Magdeburg, Berlin area, and we were right about the Magdeburg area when we were hit by a couple of hundred Me-109s. And the German tactics were the 109s, and they came in from altitude. The 109s would come in and hit and run and do whatever they could in their paths to get a bomber, and then keep going. And then this would draw our fighters to chase them. And then they had the 190s. After the first attack by the 109s, the 190s would come down and then chew up the bombers. That was their concept. But our group in particular was no chasing. They're through, they're done. You stay with the bombers and you protect the bombers. And that's what we did. Anyway, the way things happened, I saw 190, and we came coming head on, and I could see his 20 millimeter cannon blinking around his nose, and my 50 were going there, and I saw a few hits on his wing, and then we passed about 50 feet apart. I went under him, he went over me, and my flight leader, he was chasing the 190, but he couldn't fire at him because I was coming. He could have hit me. So as soon as I passed under him, he zapped him, and so he got him. So, and that was one of the missions, the first mission that I really saw how bad the bombers were taking it, and came to the conclusion that they were the bravest of the brave. And then come 10 April, and we were on a heavy force of about 1,200 bombers. Were scheduled to bomb Magdeburg, Potsdam, Berlin, and Oranienburg. And we all were one big group until we got just outside of Magdeburg, and then the bombers split off to their particular targets. Everything was normal, flak and stuff like that, until we got to the target. And the bombers were almost simultaneously releasing their load. And then I saw and I was flying high cover about 5,000 feet above the bombers. And I saw a gaggle of ME-262s, turbojets, hit the formation, and I latched on by my eyeballs onto one 262, and it had just blew up a 17, and it was coming in after another one. And I, of course, as soon as I saw him, I rolled over and started down at him with throttles wide open. And I came into his 6 o'clock position, and just as he blew up his second B-17, and I got some hits in his left wing, and I saw some fire and smoke, and he rolled over and started down to the deck. I followed him, and he disappeared into some clouds. Well, I wasn't going to follow him into the clouds. So I broke off the chase, and I looked over and I saw this airfield just loaded with aircraft. And I thought, well, what's better than that? So I just went and the motto of the fighter pilot is, one pass, haul ass. When you're strafing an aerodrome, I made probably 4 too many. I made about 5 passes, and I blew up the first 4 passes. I blew up 4 fighters on the ground, and then started a hangar on fire that's coming around for my last pass. And I latched on to a FW-200, which is a Condor, big 4-engine, part of Hitler's fleet of transport type of aircraft. As I was coming in at him, I felt the thud, and then just as I blew him, I was starting my pull-up, I felt another thud, and then I saw some oil coming over my windscreen, and so I made it up to 10,000 feet, and I called my group commander, and I said, I was hit, and I didn't know whether I was going to go east or west. I was making up my mind, and I explained the situation, told him where the airfield was. Anyway, I decided to go west. We were briefed ahead of time that the Allied forces were be fighting in Magdeburg, and it was about 90 miles from where I was, just outside of Berlin, and so I decided to head towards Magdeburg. Well, I got within probably 30, 40 miles, and I was down to 1,000 feet, and I knew I wasn't going to make it, so I was looking for a place to bail out, and so I unhooked, and then just as I unhooked, I looked over at the 3 o'clock position, and the FW-190 was coming after me. So I was able to turn into him. My aircraft was burning on the right side. I was able to turn into him as he fired, and he missed. And by that time, I was down to 500 feet, and I said, too low to bail out. I better belly this thing in. I look at the place, and I'm thinking, of course, this is all milliseconds going on in your mind, and all your training and everything, guiding you. And I thought, hell, I'm going to kill myself. I unstrapped. I was going to bail out at 1,000 feet, so I unstrapped, and I don't have time to strap up again and do a landing. So I had to go over the side. I couldn't go onto the right side because it's burning, and that's the side just go because the torque will throw you away from the aircraft. So I go on the left side, and I hit the tail with my knee, and I was about 350 feet when I bailed out. Hit my knee, and then pulled the ripcord. The chute opened. I swung once and hit the ground hard. So that was it. And I get up and I look around, and it's just it's April. It's farmland. Nothing, no buildings, nothing, no trees, nothing. And there's a group of civilians, about 15 civilians coming after me. And they're about 20 yards away, and I hear a noise behind me, and I look around, and it's a Luftwaffe sergeant in a motorcycle, and he pulls up alongside me, and he pulls out his Lucas, fires a couple of shots in the air, and holds the civilians off. He says, "I'm his prisoner," and that was it. And then some mucks from the town, the burgomaster, the chief of police and stuff, they come out. They want to question me, interrogate me. So they bring me to town, some kind of a official building, and I'm in the. They're getting really ticked off at me. The chief of police wants to shoot me around the spot, and there's all arguing going on between the Luftwaffe sergeant, and he says, "Let's go." And so he takes me and puts me on the motorcycle, and we go. And Berg, there was a big Luftwaffe base at Berg. So we go there, and I put in a local lockup, and I'm questioned for some Gestapo come in, and they questioned me for about 4 or 5 hours. Nothing, physical or anything, just intense questioning. And then I've been there for a couple of nights, and each night the RAF is bombing the airfield, so I'm in this bomb shelter with all these Germans. And the bombs going off. Anyway, the next day they shoot me off to Stalag 11, which was a British POW camp. It was about an hour train ride, I think, from Berg. And I get there, and the most, or 99% of the Brits had left. They were evacuating in front of the Allied troops and bringing them further into Germany. But there's still about 100 Tommies there, and they were scheduled for the next morning to start the march back toward Berlin. So they put me in with that group, and so we're on the march, and it was just pandemonium. It was Wehrmacht armies going east, retreating, and then others going west, trying to reinforce the Western Front, and motorcycles going up, and then thousands of refugees going east and west, depending upon their nationalities and stuff, and motorcycles going up and down the road trying to get some kind of order. And then to top it all off, we get strafed a couple of times by our fighters. Of course, they don't know. They see the army vehicles there and stuff. And but anyway, I finally made it to Stalag 3, to Luckenwalde. I'm there for about 5-6 days, and security was completely lax, and I just basically went under the fence at night and started towards Berlin, and I got about 5-6 miles away from the camp, and I hear this rumbling, and I was walking along a ditch, and then I see it's a Russian tank, and I go out and wave down. And some way, I can't have no idea how we communicated, but this Russian lieutenant and I were able to communicate, and he tells me to hop on. And so they were going to Wittenberg. Their target was Wittenberg on the Elbe. And so I hopped on the tanks with them and fought with them until through Jitterbug, and then up through to Wittenberg on the Elbe. An American patrol comes across the Elbe to meet with the Russian. It was a little reluctance from the Russians to release me. And, Potsdam was going on at the time, and tensions were getting high. And I don't know if it was, anyway, the American sergeant saw me in the background. You could tell I was American with my flight suit and stuff. And there was some discussion going on between he and the lieutenant. And anyway, they released me to him, and then I went on some patrols with them before we got back to their headquarters at Halle. And then I spent a day or two with them, and I took off and said, I'm going to see you. And I was walking towards the west, and after several miles, I've come across a C-47 parked in a field, picking up a bunch of political prisoners. They were striped and emaciated, and they asked the lieutenant, I said, where are you going? He said, to Paris. I said, it's better than that, So I hop around with them and get back to Paris, and then I get stopped. I get stabbed and deloused and all that sort of stuff. I can do uniform, and I'm under control, so my wandering days are over. In 1945, I got married on the 13th of June to my my fiance, Josephine, who I named my aircraft after. And then after that, I went into accounting and finance. I was a finance officer. Then I got orders for Korea, the fighter pilot. And I got assigned to the 18th Fighter Bomber Squadron, 20th Fighter Group, stationed at Busan, and with the forward operating base up at Hangsong, K-46, about probably 40, 50 miles from the DMZ. Called to the general's office, General Rogers, and he said, well, you're going to make me the finance officer. I said, I've been sent over here as a fighter pilot. He said, well, you had two brothers that were killed, and you're not going to go into combat. The Sullivan Act, they had passed that. And I said, the Sullivan Act says that is a lone surviving son. And I said, I've got about three other brothers at home yet. I said, I'm not the sole surviving son. But anyway, after probably a day or two of discussions and stuff like that, they said, okay. I flew 76 missions, and had one that, I was doing a napalm run, and troops in trenches along a ridge, and a mountain ridge, and I led a napalm attack through that, and went good. Then I came around with the rocket. We had 4 or 5-inch rockets, but they were not controllable. They went where your aircraft was pointed. That was about it. No sights and that sort of stuff. Anyway, and in order to do that, to be effective, you had to be straight and level. You can't be in a slip and turn, stuff like that, then because the rockets would go flying off. So I'm straight and level, and I pop off my first two, and then I'm ready to pop the third one, and my canopy explodes. And I reach up, and I got my hand full of blood, and I don't know how bad I'm hurt or anything. So I called base. I'm only about 35 miles away from base. And I called base and said what the problem was. And coincidentally, my wingman had lost his radio. So there's a way of maneuvering that tells you can talk to each other that way. So I wobble my wings. He comes in and joins, and I said we're heading back to base. And so we go back to base, and then we get over the base, and he peels off ahead of me and lands, and all the meat wagons I'd called, the meat wagons, the fire engines, and all were out the runway, chasing him down the runway. So anyway, I land nonchalantly. I go to my parking place, and I'm down in the cockpit, straighten up, you get a messy cockpit. The maps are down on the floor and stuff. I'm there, and the crew chief's up on the wing. He's waiting for my report, and I go up, and I startle him because I had blood all over my face, and he slips and falls off the wing. Anyway, what it was, when the small arms went in through the wing root, and then through the canopy, and that exploded the plexiglass, and then bounced off my armor plating behind my head, and I had plexiglass all around my face. So it was about 4 or 5 hours of flight surgeon picking the plexiglass out of my face. and then I was flying another couple days later, so it wasn't that bad. After Korea, I decided to go into command and control. I was operations officer for the support for the Air Weapons Controller School at Tyndall. And then I decided after a while I'd go to the Air Weapons Controller School and get into command and control, and that's what I did. And then in 1956, it was, I think it was, yeah, I was transferred to Newfoundland to the 6th or 4th NORAD region that had air defense responsibility for the whole Northeast. The major routes between Europe and America were. And then I was assigned to as a liaison officer to the RAF Fighter Command, and where I was responsible for the operation of our BMUs, the Ballistic Missile Early Warning Site at Fylingdales Moor in England. I spent a 2-year tour there, and then I got orders to Vietnam after the completion in 1967. I made lieutenant colonel, and then I was transferred to Vietnam. It's been my pleasure and my honor to be able to express, what I have done.